Hi all. I'm Jerry Last. I'm the technical trainer for Wrath by a Wire. And thank you all for taking a little bit of time out of your day to learn about our new SmartView 2 product line. The class is going to consist of two main components. First is going to be kind of an introduction video slash a installation basics. Then after we do that, we're going to shift from the video portion into a brief Q&A period where we can answer any questions that are specific to the video. And then we're going to go to live programming on a system that I actually have here with us. And at that point, everybody will be able to jump in and do whatever we need to. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we will begin our video. Hi, I'm Jerry Last, Technical Sales Specialist for Wrath by a Wire. This is a quick instructional video on the installation of our visual elevator communication system, the SmartView 2. When you receive the equipment from Wrath Janus by a Wire, you're going to get two primary boxes, the elevator unit and the machine room unit. Inside of the elevator unit box, you have the elevator unit as well as a couple of plastic pieces that are going to allow for the connection into the elevator cab. They also act as spacers, so one is thicker than the other depending upon the depth of the pass-through of the window. Then we also have the connectors. Remember, keep track of your connectors. These are going to plug into the different ports that are on the side to make our connections to our unit. Then we also have our machine room unit. The machine room unit has the installation and operations manual included in it. So keep track of this until you're familiar enough to have it memorized. But all of the step-by-step instructions, wiring diagrams, light indicators, the network parameters are all located in here. Use this as your reference material and it's very helpful. And of course we have our machine room unit. The machine room unit is a simple red box and it is powered via our 24-volt power supply that is pre-connectorized. So that goes all together along with the connectors that are used for the machine room unit. Please note that there are screw holes that are on the side, okay, keystone holes, and we provide you with the screws for mounting that unit on a piece of wood in the machine room. Now that we have our units unboxed and or on site, obviously we have our elevator unit that's going to be mounted in the panel in the elevator car, and we have our machine room unit. Our signals for demonstration purposes are going to be provided via our Wrath Janus by a Wire voice gateway. This is a cellular device that provides us with analog dial tone. And our internet connectivity is going to be provided via our cellular data gateway. So these devices are available. Contact your Wrath sales professional for proper pricing. when we go through and make our connections, and remember, it doesn't matter if this is from the owner's network or if it's from one of our cellular devices, we are going to plug in our data connection into our Ethernet in port. Ethernet in feeds the internet into the device. Then, on the back side of the unit, we take our pre-connectorized 24-volt power source and we are going to plug that into our power in, ensuring that make sure your polarity is correct. Right? We know that the transformer is good, so just have that done properly and we'll be in good shape. To get the telephone line connected, if you are bringing in a phone line, I prefer using a standard biscuit jack that is going to be wired out to the red and green terminals. What that does is I'll put my 2-pin connector that plugs into the back of the machine room unit on the opposite end of that, and then I can take a standard silver satin line cord and plug that in. In this case, it happens to be coming from our voice gateway. This could also be coming from a customer's telephone system. They have analog station ports available, or that standard analog POTS or B1 line that we had mentioned before. And that is going to connect to our tel-in connector. So, the other big one on this is our PLC. Okay, the PLC connection is how the machine room unit talks to the elevator unit. Single wire pair through your traveling cable. What you're going to do is wire that out in such a fashion through your traveler that the PLC is going to have the same polarity on both ends. And once those units are connected between the connector marked PLC in the machine room and the connector marked PLC in the elevator, then we sit back and wait for a minute, because what's going to happen next is the machine room unit is going to recognize that it has something connected, and it is going to start talking and pair up with that elevator unit. Now, while we're awaiting that, please note that there are some additional connectors on here. Say 24-volt LED with the plus and minus. Some elevator manufacturers have the call button associated with the phone so that it has either an illumination internal or the illumination ring on the outside. Typically that's 24 volts DC, so we can take that out of the 24 volt LED output and connect that up to that to provide that power. Down beneath that we have our buttons. Those buttons are for the yes and no connections. Normally open connections are provided on one of those adapters that we provided you with that you plug in. The top two are normally open for no, just beneath that, normally open for yes. So when the yes or no button, or if you're so using the door open, door close buttons, when it sees that contact closure, it's going to know that you answered yes or no to any of the questions that come in. A couple of additional points on here. We obviously do have an Ethernet port. It's on this. You are not going to use that Ethernet port unless directed to do so by your technical support professionals here at Rath Janus by Avire. Now, we have our power applied. We have our routed internet with the proper ports open, and we have our outside telephone line provided to the unit. When all of that is done and we have our elevator unit connected to the PLC connector in the machine room, then our indicator lights should read as follows. Your power light is going to be on solid, meaning you have your 24 volts DC. Status light is going to be blinking. That's to make it stand out a little bit. the internet. That means that we have a proper connection to the internet and we can talk on that bidirectional pathway that we need. The telephone in means that you have a good working recognized telephone line that's attached to the tel-in port on the back of the machine room unit. And then the car phone being green means that it recognizes that it has the elevator unit wired out properly and in proper order to the PLC on both sides. Once we complete that and we have those lights in that fashion, we can verify that we have the connectivity that we require by going to the unit and pressing and holding the yes and no buttons simultaneously for about 7 seconds. When we do that, then the screen is going to illuminate and it will provide us with an IP address. If we're on somebody else's network and they are passing out DHCP, Dynamic Host Control Protocol, that means that I plug it into the network and the network gives it an address. After this gets an address off the network, get the MAC address and the IP address that was given to this unit back to the IT department and request that they do a permanent lease on the DHCP address that was given to this device. Now that we've done that, we are ready to go through and do our programming. Does anybody have any questions? That's kind of as I had mentioned, a 10,000 foot view of the system. I would love to make it more difficult than it is, but I can't because ultimately what we're looking at is a single wire pair that is going from the machine room unit into the car phone. And then we have our network connection that's there so that we can go through and utilize the internet availability in order to have proper connectivity. That's as close as we get. Any questions from anybody on the video portion?
I got one.
Please go ahead.
For the motor room, how do I contact into the elevator in the motor room?
Okay, excellent question. Now, are you talking about the programming of the device, or how do you actually interact with the people in the event that they need assistance?
In the event that you need to interact with the people that's inside.
Excellent. We will be covering that as part of the programming. But I want to go through and make sure that I'm covering that as well. We have the SmartView hub, which is the way that the monitoring company is going to be going through and accessing it, whether it's monitoring company, local answering position, whatever the case may be. And with that, I will log into the SmartView hub so that everybody can see exactly what that looks like. But what happens is when the button is pressed, and let's take a step back, think about the intent behind the product. Okay, this product is designed to be in addition to the standard voice communication that we're accustomed to having. So the button is pressed to initiate a call. Okay, and whether you're using your the integrated phone that's on the SmartView 2 or a pre-existing or a required separate elevator phone, in which case you would use the either the SmartView 2 and eliminate the telephone portion of it, or use the 7200M, which is the modular car phone unit. So 7200M is the modular unit. We'll cover specific connections and everything on that. That uses a separate phone. We were covering the functionality of the system. When that call goes through to the emergency response group, right, now we got it, okay? 7200M is our 7200 modular. This uses the pre-existing telephone in the elevator car and also has a USB port for an external camera. Now, our 7200 unit, so not the M, but the regular 7200, also has the capability of using USB port in order to have a camera connected and has the capability of using a connected telephone line. So with the 7200 or the SmartView 2 machine room unit plus 7200, you don't need the separate phone. If you want the separate phone, you would use the 7200 and just not connect the phone, or use the 7200M. Okay. In either instance, once that call goes through, if it is answered on the far end, but they do not have verbal communication with the person that requested assistance, at that point, they would go and log into the SmartView ID number that is located on the back of each device. So when you have that done, then that's the information that needs to be included in that message that's heard by the respondent or answering party. Then they log into the SmartView hub, at which time they're going to be able to log in with their credentials, put in that SmartView ID, call up the camera, and interact with the people in the elevator car. And like I said, we will see that in a little bit, but most of the time we hope that we're never going to get to that point, because we'll be able to converse with the people or find out by activating the camera that it was an errant button press. So other questions? Okay. Going once,
Yeah, I
going
got one more.
twice.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, go
I got
ahead,
one.
please.
I didn't get the last part when you said we would have to go a part of the video where you had to get a lease for the DHCP.
Okay. For IT departments that want to put static IP addresses on everything, we have the capability of putting a static IP address on the devices. I do not recommend doing that. Instead, I like to have the local IT department have control over the address scope for the devices. So when you plug it in and it gets an address from the DHCP server, then have the MAC address within the local network locked onto that specific address. So we do a permanent lease on the address, as opposed to doing a static IP address on the machine room unit. What that does is, if there is a network change that goes on for whatever reason, then the customer doesn't have to have you come out, or the installation group come out, in order to affect the network changes, because the system is just going to grab an address off of the available pool when the network change has been recognized. So we can go through and do it, and I'll show you where when we get into the programming in just a little bit. But I do recommend that we just have the DHCP turned on and then have the local network do a permanent lease on there if that recognition is required. Oh, excellent question. I had a Chad, thank you for doing that. Had issues with being supplied a 7200M that does not have the phone, where the 7200 does. Why are there two different models? Okay, there are two different models because of availability, one. Okay, second is for those that have been installing the Wrath SmartView equipment for a while, you'll know that we originally put out SmartView 1 devices. And there are a number of folks that have done mods and upgrades in stages. So they may have ordered SmartView 1s in order to get the first phase of their project done, and then ordered the next phase and received SmartView 2s. Well, the 7200M actually fits into the footprint of the SmartView 1. So it is there for using the separate phone and the segmented camera if customers so desire. But it also is a direct drop-in for the SmartView 1 device if you're upgrading your platform to be all SmartView 2s. Excellent question. Anybody else? And I see somebody had asked about, no, Chad, you had asked about the line loss. Okay. Uh, the the line loss, I'm assuming that you're talking about losing connectivity at that point. Is that correct? I'm hoping that that's communication failure, but I'd uh, like to go through and clarify that if possible. But
That's
not
correct.
okay,
Is
cool.
correct.
So on the actual machine room unit, there is a relay output. And again, uh, the relay is going to change state when there is a failure within the system. So line loss, loss of internet connectivity, et cetera, to let you know that, hey, the system is unavailable right now. So that's still part of the elevator code, and that is built into this device. For the intent of this particular period of instruction, we're going to go through and just uh, log into this device. This is the SmartView 2 login screen. Within the manual, you're going to see where there are a couple different methodologies for accessing the machine room unit. First is there is a Wi-Fi dongle that plugs into the USB port that's on the back of the device. When you plug that in, that will give a 10-minute SSID broadcast for that specific machine room unit, in which case you log in using the credentials that are provided within the installation manual. Okay, but you only got 10 minutes at that point. Okay. Second method is to go through and there are Ethernet in and Ethernet out ports on the back of the unit. We'll see that in a minute. Okay. The Ethernet out port you can plug directly into, and you can either go to smartviewconfig.com or you can go to the static IP address that is assigned to the Ethernet out port, which is 10.42.1.1. So those are the different means of doing it. Here we're going to log into it. Keep in mind that the password that I have here is slightly different than the initialization password because the first thing that the system is going to ask you when you log in, you use admin and password, is okay, change your password. So keep track of your passwords, please. If you forget it, it's not a big deal, but you're going to have to reset the system, lose all your parameters, and start over. So we log into our device. And when we log in, it is going to show us what is connected on there. It says, welcome to SmartView 2 Wrath. And we see our machine room. Okay, clicking on that arrow is going to tell us here is our current rev of firmware that's on it. And then Belina is our control point. And it's ready to update true. That means that this thing can auto update if we want it to. UUID, that number needs to match the number that's on the sticker on the bottom of the machine room unit. And then, of course, the MAC address, as mentioned with the network parameters, if we are going to do a permanent lease, we can get the MAC address off of this part. Okay, telephone state is okay. That means that I have a working telephone line attached to it. So we will back out of that. Now we see device elevator. Okay? For those that paid attention to the choppy version of the video, we saw that once we get power applied and everything else connected, that we can go through and have the power applied, and the machine room unit will recognize the device that's in the elevator. Okay, so your car phone, and it will come up and it will have a open circle that's next to it. In which case you would click on that and it will give you the option to pair with that device. Now, since this pairing has already been completed, we come down here and here's all the information on it. Now, for future reference, if there is something that happens, somebody takes a hammer to your car phone, then we would go through and click on the delete elevator unit button. When we do that, it's going to remove that pairing. And then when we connect the new elevator phone, it's going to come up with that information and allow us to pair with it. So very, very simple auto recognition on the pairing side of things. Now, if you click on the 3 bars that's in the upper right corner, that's going to come up with our different options on here. Okay. And when I had mentioned the static IP, we can go through and do that right here. Okay. Personally, stay away from it. Now, for the installers that are out there, in the documentation package that you're going to be receiving, you will see where there is the capability of creating a temporary login for the SmartView hub so that you can get at your devices. Well, while you're out there and installing, it may not be the best time and you may not want to be limited, but as long as you're direct connected to the unit, you can pull up the elevator camera feed. When you pull up the elevator camera feed, it shows you exactly what's going on with it. That other shot that you saw was a shot of my basement with my Green Bay Packer flag on it. So this is the elevator camera that's associated with the device that we're currently logged into. So we can utilize that in order to adjust the thumb screw that's on the top, get our camera so we can see within 6 inches of the floor all the way around the device. Oh, now we're going to go into our settings page. This is the big one because it's all in order. It's all here. Okay. Start off at the top. We put in our telephone number. Okay. Keep in mind that when you do that, you should have already tested your phone line by using an analog telephone or a telephone test set and dialed the telephone number that you're ultimately going to want the elevator to call when that button is pressed. When you do that, use the exact same platform. Do I need a 1 or do I just dial the 10 digits? Or in some cases, do I just dial the 7-digit number? Okay. If you are behind a phone system, PBX, or something that requires an additional digit, at that point, you would put that on the front end of this number. Keep in mind that if you do need a digit to access the external line, typically an 8 or a 9, then you would put a pause in behind it to allow the system that's providing dial tone an extra moment to provide dial tone to the device. In which case, we would go through and on the front end, put a 9 and then a capital P. So if I were on a standard PBX that needs a 9 to access the external telephone line, I would throw a 9 and a P and then my number behind it. Now the system, if you take a look, has the capability of dialing up to 5 telephone numbers. Okay. They are sequential. It will dial phone number 1. If it is not answered within 45 seconds, it's going to roll to phone number 2, etc. on down the line. So any busy signals or not answering is going to continue down this hierarchy list. The address that we put in here is used for the automated message. And we'll cover that in just a couple of seconds. But we do have a text-to-speech engine that's in there. It uses the information on the address and elevator name to create that outbound message. Car phone volume is adjustable at this particular juncture. Okay, it's set to 3/4. You can log in here if the customer is saying, hey, I need it a little bit louder, I need it a little bit softer. This is where we go through and adjust that. And then the microphone volume, same deal. Go through and use this slider to adjust the broadcast sensitivity of that particular microphone. Under location message, we can see where we can select either a pre-recorded message or a text-to-speech. If we use the text-to-speech, that's where it's taking the information that we put in and using that to create the message. If you wish to go through and record your own message, okay, and for those that are calling a monitoring company that utilizes caller ID, so they don't want anything except for the RATH SmartView ID, if that, this is where we would go through and change that. And instead of having text to speech, which is going to put in all the information, we can just put in pre-recorded message. If we change that to pre-recorded message, then we're going to want to go into our advanced settings and manipulate a little bit of the stuff associated with that. As we can see, the SmartView ID is on there. Incoming calls answer after first ring. Ring timeout. Okay, this is the timing in order to change to the different numbers. Speech timeout is the call timer. After that call has been active for 3 minutes, if the system will play a message that says, hit a button on your keypad in order to continue the call. Okay? If it doesn't hear DTMF coming from the far side, it's just going to hang up. That's kind of the fail-safe for calls that don't disconnect properly. Now, with the message itself, okay, location message. We're on pre-recorded. How many times do we want that message to play? 0. So if the organization that you're utilizing to answer the calls is operating exclusively off the caller ID that's associated with that particular elevator car, you can make it so that there is an immediate connection to the elevator phone once that call is answered. Or have it play once or twice or on repeat until they hear a key press from the far side. Again, the main parameter on this is if you do go through and create a pre-recorded message, you want to make sure that that ID number that's on the back of the car phone unit is included in that message so the people that hear the call will go through and be able to log into it using the SmartView hub. Now, a couple of other items that are up here that are extremely important. If you are utilizing the speaker in the car phone as the annunciator, then you're going to click on Enable Annunciator, in which case there is a microphone and speaker connection on the back of the car phone. You're going to connect your audio for your annunciator to the microphone input on the back of the 7200. Enable ring down. Now, there are people out there going, nobody uses ring down circuits anymore. Well, yes, but, and here's the but. On some providers, other than RATH, of course, some providers, the signaling doesn't quite work the way that we think that it should. And it almost serves as an incompatibility issue. Well, if you change the circuit into a ring down, so you enable ring down by checking that box, and the device that you have connected to that telephone input on your machine room unit has the capability of dialing unto itself, then you can utilize that as a de facto ring down circuit. So the machine room unit goes off hook when it sees the button press. The device that is providing the dial tone detects that it's off hook and does the dialing on its behalf. Active state for alarm filter is extremely important if we're using the door open and door close buttons. If use alarm filter is enabled, then alarm filter active state determines which state to filter alarm calls. All right, well, let's get past that. If the doors open and close when that button is pressed, then it's not going to allow for that to happen. That's where use alarm filter happens. The alarm functionality is controlled by that checkbox. If it's enabled, then the car phone will not trigger a call if the state doesn't match the alarm filter active state. Okay? If it's disabled, the alarm push button will always activate a call. Well, if you have a separate alarm button that is on your COP, then you're going to just leave that the way that it is so that they can place the call. The active state for the alarm filter is a big one for the door open, door close, because we want people to be able to answer yes and no to any of the questions that are typed on there. So down here is where we have the button instructions displayed on the screen. When a call comes in, the first thing that happens is a flashing goes on the screen. We're going to do live on camera with this in just a moment. But we go through and have flashing that occurs on the screen that's in the elevator car that says attention. And then it will go to the text screen. Okay. On this end of things, we're going to be able to see that the text is in a box that's off to the right so that you can see into the elevator car and then text a message that is on there, yes or no question, so that people can use either the door open and door close buttons, or they can use dedicated yes and no buttons. So depending upon how your unit's been manufactured and whether or not they have the separated button is going to dictate how that's there. Put that on the screen so that people that are requesting help know what's going on with it. Now, the message length is the next item. Okay. If you are recording your message yourself by dialing into the device, and again, refer to your manual for actually changing the parameters, you want to get that message length as short as possible. So I do recommend the 7-second 14 as the default. And then our button configuration. The button configurations are set to normally open. So for the yes and no, the car phone is looking for that momentary contact closure to respond to questions. So I know that that was a real quick run through of the different parameters. All this is in the manual and is just very straightforward as far as the way that it's explained and the capabilities of the system. What I would like next is to open the floor real quick. I know that we're going to go just a little bit over. For those that did hang out long enough to hear everything, thank you for being indulgent of the technical difficulties that we had. And you will be receiving follow-up email with a copy of the presentation and the documentation. Anybody else that wants to hang out for a little bit, let's go ahead and it's question and answer time. All right. How long of a pause? That's 1 second for the capital P. So can we take control over here? Phone numbers 1 through 5 appear to be optional. Okay. Phone numbers 1 through 5 are optional, okay, for the 7200. and the 7200M. 7200M, you're not even going to go through and program that. Anything that is programmed, if the phone line isn't on there, is exclusively because of the necessity of having to have the field populated. We do that so that people don't forget it. There are going to be more of the 7200s that are fielded with the phone line. The speaker on the elevator unit is indeed an 8-ohm speaker. So we do have that that matches the impedance of the CE speaker. Traveling cable wire with the size and number. Again, we're looking at a single wire pair for that. And the limitation is more based upon the size of the connector. So kind of hard to determine based upon this. This is your actual PLC connector with the openings there. It's designed for using 18 gauge wire. You could cram a 16 into it if you really wanted to, but the cabling used is a single wire pair through your traveler that's already available. Well, hopefully that answered that. Can we remove the pre-recorded outbound message? Yes, we can. The way to go through and remove that pre-recorded outbound message is to change the number of times that the message plays. Because remember, we can go through and change that to play not at all, once, twice, or continuous until a key has been hit on the far side. Okay. Any other questions? First, did that answer everybody's questions? I know that that was kind of a rapid fire with the different stuff. I mentioned in the online programming session about the alarm button parameters. This would be the push to call button that activates the phone. Okay, well, or the alarm bell. There are still some elevators that are out there that use the alarm bell button to initiate a call. So that's predominantly what that is for. It's going to be little used. So typically that would be a separate button. And when using SmartView 2 setup in a building with elevator 60 feet of travel, is the lobby SmartView / Smart Rescue required, or is there another option for the building, such as interface in the lobby PC? Okay, yes. But here's how that works. You still have to have that device that will be able to join in the call, even if they're not directly getting it. So you would get a command center or a smart rescue type device that would go in that spot. We do have a visual smart rescue and a visual command center that we sell as part of the system requirements. If you get that, that has an integrated PC and a touch screen that can be utilized to pull up any of the elevators that are on site. If you don't want to do that and you're familiar with the command center and the smart rescue, or the customer already has everything set up within their own network, they can use a local PC or a local laptop as long as it meets the requirement for the location of the device. Because remember, those have to be in a spot that the respondents from that are dispatched from the call that was received can utilize the equipment. With the all-in-one unit that includes the elevator phone, is a communication failure checking the actual phone in the car or just the unit in the machine room? Right? Both. Because you have to have the capability of placing the call, and it has to see that connectivity up to the car phone, and it's also checking the dial tone that's being applied to the telephone in connector on the machine room unit. So, all right, and just to elaborate slightly on a couple of those points, I've got my machine room unit right here. We do have the connectors that are on the back on this that are difficult at best to see, but we have our telephone in connector that's over here, and our relay connector that's over here. So the relay is going to change state if it doesn't see the car phone or the incoming telephone line. Power connector, so 24 volts, backed up 24 volts, connects up there. And of course, our 2-wire PLC connector that is going between our machine room unit and the car phone through the traveler is there. On the other side, we have our Ethernet in, which is our primary connection into the internet. And then the Ethernet out, which is utilized for a direct connection of an Ethernet cable between a programming laptop and this device. This cannot be utilized as a pass-through to provide internet to multiple devices. If you're going to do that, you need a switch that is before the machine room units. Okay. Do we have anything else that's going on? Okay. Now, what additional Wrath components are needed for integration into the lobby PC? Twisted shielded 4-pair to the lobby area needed from the smartphone. Okay. If you are using the integrated telephone on the SmartView 2, then you're going to have a command center, the visual command center that's there. That is a single wire pair that's going to go between the machine room unit and one of the available telephone ports on the command center system. If you are using the separated Wrath 2100 series telephone as your primary voice communication, that's when you would need the 2-pair that go from the actual elevator phone, so up in the COP, all the way back to the Smart Rescue visual base station. Keep in mind that the 2100 series phones also require 24 volts in order to be able to operate. So with the command center, you don't need that separate power supply, just a single wire pair between the distribution module and the machine room units. Okay. And okay, can the configuration be pushed from off-site or does it have to be done on-site? And no, you don't have to have a laptop. So I'm going to answer the second part of that first. I actually have customers out there that got really good at it and use that Wi-Fi dongle plugged into the USB port. Okay. Oh, we are. Okay. So now we're the latest rev of firmware is going to extend that timing to 20 minutes to be able to complete the programming. So you do a search for the SSID, find it, log into that, and then do the programming in that fashion. So you can do it from a smartphone, tablet, iPad, anything that has internet access. You could use your laptop for that as well. The configuration does not have to be completed on site. However, if you are going to go through and attempt to do it remotely, you're going to have to call into Wrath Tech Support because we do not leave the public URL turned on. There is a way of logging into the device remotely in order to accommodate the programming, but it's still best served by going through and doing it locally. Okay, and Smart Rescue phone will work with this device. Another question on the Smart Rescue. It'll work with this, but the audio portion, at that point, they become two separate devices. You're going to have the telephone that's going to be tied in with the Smart Rescue, and you're going to have the SmartView 2 unit, whether it's the 7200M or the 7200, that aren't going to use the audio for placing the calls. 72. Right. That was part of the question. They were saying, oh, if we need 2-pair to the Smart Rescue, how does that work? Well, it doesn't. So, okay. Any other questions? I don't see anything else coming in. Okay, once again, my name is Jerry Last, jerry.last at avire-global.com. We'll go ahead and send that out along with the documentation and a copy of this presentation. If anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to your elevator sales professional, depending upon your region, our inside sales group by calling 1-800-451-1460, which is the toll-free number into our office here, or send us a quick email and we'll happily provide you with any additional information required.